I'd like to call to the stage Cynthia. She's coming. Let's give a big hand to Cynthia.
Yes. Hey everyone. Thank you so much. I know you guys are hanging in there. So thank you. This is actually going to be so exciting, motivating. It's what we need right now. So I'm going to present to you, I mean, this individual doesn't really need any presentations. I think all of us know why we're here. He's gone from launching a media company, music media company, all the way to now CEO of SurveyMonkey. So allow me to introduce you to Dave Goldberg.
Thank you.
No,
I'm on now. Okay.
Yes.
Well, it's great to be here, and excited. We have a team here in Lisbon. I've got a few people from my team here, so it's nice to be here.
No, it's incredible. I think we all were waiting for this day or right now, so I just want to get to it. I mean, right now the conversation is how to go from 12 employees to a $12 billion valuation. But I want to take a little, just a step back to how you started as an entrepreneur and going through the corporate side to the entrepreneur side. So what was it like?
Yeah, so my background, I probably like some of you who are entrepreneurs, I was working in a job. I worked at Capitol Records, which no longer exists, EMI Music, but a record company. And I had this idea that computers are going to be a better way for people to learn about and discover music. And this doesn't sound like that great an idea, but this was 20 years ago. So it was kind of original back then. And I quit my job. I was 26 years old. With my best friend from high school, we started working out of my apartment. We borrowed money on credit cards. We raised $100,000 from friends and family because those are the only people crazy enough to give you money when you've never done anything like this before. And we went into it with the attitude that it wasn't likely to work, but we were excited about the idea. We were excited about starting a company. And if it didn't work, we would have learned something valuable, and we could then, go apply that and go get a job. And it did end up working. We did end up raising more money. We built a pretty successful online music business. I took it public. I sold it to Yahoo, and I spent 6 years at Yahoo running that business. So, but I went into it with the expectation that I was going to fail. And I guess I don't want to be a downer here, but most startups fail. And it's just a fact of life. And I think for me, you just have to go into it with that attitude. Yeah. That like, hey, this is unlikely to work, but I'm going to learn something. I'm going to learn how to do things. And one of the things that I think has been best about Silicon Valley, kind of from a culture perspective, is that we actually not only are okay with people who've failed, but we somewhat celebrate it and reward people who've failed. And I know that sounds bizarre, but failure means someone's not going to make those mistakes again. Failure means that there's no way to go to school to learn to be an entrepreneur. You actually just have to do it. And so even if the first one didn't work out, sometimes the second or third or fourth, and I have friends who, they were on their fourth startup before it finally worked. And you think, wow, why did they keep going? But they believed in it. They had some traction. They got some success. And so, I think you have to have kind of that attitude going in, that failure is not only an option, it is the likeliest one. Mm-hmm. But that's okay.
It's only a failure if you don't learn from it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. And I mean a failure from like that the business doesn't become profitable or doesn't create a successful exit for investors and employees, those kind of things. And I was, like I said, I had $60,000 in credit card debt at one point in time. I hadn't taken a salary in 2 years. I mean, I've been there, so I know what that's like. There was a few times we couldn't make payroll, so we had to put it on our credit cards to make payroll. I mean, all sorts of crazy stuff you do when you're an entrepreneur and you're scraping it together. So it's a little bit different for SurveyMonkey, but we'll talk about that. But
So can you, I guess, hone in on one lesson from going corporate and then jumping into the entrepreneurial bandwagon?
I mean, besides sort of just having that open mind about it, I think you got to surround yourself with great people. You got to build a great team. Being an entrepreneur is an incredibly lonely thing to do.
Oh, yeah.
And so being at events like this is really important because you feed off the energy and the experience and the sort of excitement of your peers, but you also need to be able to build a great team. And some of those are people who work for you, but some of those are people who just give you advice. They might be customers, they might be vendors, they might be, professional services are really important. Lawyers, accountants, PR firms, those people are super knowledgeable because they've been through it before. But building the right team around you is really critical. And, it took me a while to figure out how to build the right team in my first business. I think I've done a better job the second time around because I had learned from my mistakes. I'm make new ones, but that's the most critical thing, I think, is you can't build a business that scales by yourself.
Yeah, that's true. But what is it that we don't really understand when we're building a team? I mean, yes, there's different personalities, there's different ways of doing that task, but what makes us actually come together and say, yes, we're the dream team and we make it work? Yeah,
no, I think that's a great question. I think one of the challenges, and it's particularly in early stage companies, you have this trade-off. The trade-off is, do I get someone who's got a lot of experience in exactly what I need, in sales, in product design, in whatever it is you're doing? Or do I get someone who's really smart and going to figure it out and learn? And the truth is, it's very hard to hire that second group when you're small. It just is. It's like, oh my God, I have to have somebody who can build this product. I can't hire someone who doesn't know how to do that or has never done it before. And so you sort of feel like you get trapped in that experience sort of framework. And you do need people sometimes with experience, but I think building the right team is getting the right mixture between those two groups of people. And so you can't have everybody with no experience, but you can't have everybody with tons of experience, because those people you bring in who are like your best athletes, if you will, that they may not have the specific experience, but they're smart and they're hungry and they work hard. And those people, if you can kind of build them yourself, it's kind of like and I apologize for the sports analogy, but it's sort of like, do you go get a great player who's very experienced? Do you go get Messi or something like that? Or do you kind of grow your own talent? And the truth is you need a mixture of both. And I think it's very true in a startup that you need to find ways to bring in some of those really smart, hungry people who don't have experience and help train them too. And you need some of the people who've got the experience. And figuring out what that mix is different for different businesses. But I think that's really important.
So I want to focus a lot about team. Oh, your Diet Coke.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
And just a reminder, if you guys want to ask questions, we will open it up to everyone about 5 minutes before we end this. And also tweet, please, hashtag ExplorersFest, Twitter, ExplorersFest, and Instagram and Facebook, and explorerfestival.com. So back to the
Okay.
team building. One of the things, the challenges I've come across and I've seen in other corporates and nonprofits, even for-profits, is a lot of the times you have too many leaders in the room, and then you get the problem no one wants to be the follower, or no one knows how to.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the other part of building a good team is getting the right sort of set of personalities, right? Yeah. And you can't have everybody who all wants to talk at the same time.
Oh.
And you got to have people who, some people, are, people who are going to get work done, and people who are, you've got to have the right mix of people. I've looked for, at SurveyMonkey in particular, I think it varies by by company, but for SurveyMonkey, we had a really big business actually when I started, and I'll come back to the SurveyMonkey story in a second, but it was 12 people when I started, but we were already quite large business, profitable, et cetera. So I had the wherewithal to go hire people knowing where we were going to be, and I could kind of hire ahead. And I think one of the challenges you have in a startup is you can't necessarily hire ahead for what you're going to need. But I was able to figure out I needed people who could operate in a startup-like environment but could also scale. And so everybody I hired for SurveyMonkey in the early days was somebody who had some mixture of startup or small company experience combined with scaling. So for example, our head of product and engineering, product marketing, is a woman named Selena Tabakawala, and she started Evite when she was in college.
Oh, wow.
And built that into a very successful business. It got sold. And then she ended up in a bunch of different roles inside of IAC, which is a very large internet conglomerate in the US, and ended up running product and engineering for Ticketmaster internationally in Europe. And so she had this great mixture of like having started her own thing and understood what that was like, but also having run a very big scaled operation and team at Ticketmaster. And that's kind of the example of, for what we needed, that was what we had to build, because we were a small team. We want to act and think like a startup, but we have to do it at scale. And finding that mixture of people who can operate in both ways is tough. So I think it varies by company, but that's what, for SurveyMonkey, what we did.
So bottom line is leaders create leaders. That's what you
Yeah,
want.
I mean, hopefully. I mean, I can't do everything myself. So, and I think that's, you know, in the beginning at SurveyMonkey, all I did was spend my time hiring, because I had to be able to build a team, and those people need to be able to build teams. And so everything started from the fact that I built a great first layer of team, and then those people have to be the leaders to build the next team. And I have to, if I did my job right and got the right people on the first part of the team, then it sort of builds from there.
So what is your daily routine? The minute that you wake up, and how do you time manage while you're doing that, by the way? Because being in this culture and beautiful Lisboa, oh, I got it right.
Yeah.
It's been hard trying to come from New York and having that, you know, different time agenda, I suppose.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you go and do work internationally? How do you?
Yeah, well, this week's a little crazy. This is, I think, my third city in 3 days, and yeah, it's this week is a little rough. But you know, normally, what I try to do it changes over time as the company has grown, right? So in the early days, I'm doing everything. And then over time, as I hire people, so now it's probably a lot different than what you would do. But I think some of the similarities in that, I think you have to do a mixture of tactical and strategic stuff. And I think one of the things that happens when you're very short-staffed, which almost all startups are, and I was when I started SurveyMonkey, is you can get too easily sucked into the tactical. And it's hard to step back and think big picture strategic. You think, I got to get this feature built, I got to get this customer sold, like all of the tactical stuff. And so one of the things I've always tried to do is make sure I have time in the day to think, to meet other people outside, to interact, where I'm not just so tactically focused that I lose the forest for the trees, if you will, the analogy. And so I think having the right mixture of time to do tactical and strategic. I mean, now we're a bigger organization, but one of the things I really try to do is cut down on the number of meetings. And meetings can be useful, but they can be a huge time suck.
Oh, yes.
And so I only have 3 regularly scheduled meetings a week. It doesn't mean I'm not in more meetings, but there's only 3 that are actually like regularly on my calendar. And I try to leave big chunks of my day open to sort of have informal, ad hoc conversations. And I think when you're in a startup, that's all the conversations. Probably you're all sitting in a room together, and that's what you have. And as you get bigger, you kind of lose some of that, and so you actually have to force that back into the organization. And so, like, I try to walk around the office and talk to people, and I don't make people always come to me. I go to them, and so I think, it's ironic when you're a startup, you're trying to be a big company, and then I think when you get to be bigger, you're really trying to be like a startup, right? It's sort of you think, oh my gosh, how do I get back to the way that was? And the truth is, you need to find the right balance. There's a lot of pain and suffering about being 3 people and having no money. Don't get me wrong. I totally get that. But you have to fight hard when you've got a couple hundred people to sort of retain that, like, quick decision making, great iteration, brainstorming stuff. Like, things, the more people you have, the more things can slow down.
So fighting hard, lesson learned right now. Yeah. So your background, I know, because we were talking behind, is on music, really. And then how do you, but for me as well, has that been influential? Has that helped you having that background, not just in school background, but also life experiences? How has that?
Yeah, I mean, I got my job in the music business because in 1991, probably some of you weren't born yet, but in 1991, I had 500 CDs. And
I remember those.
Exactly. Now they're all on your phone. And I went to interview for this job working for the president general manager of this record label, Capitol Records, and they had interviewed a lot of people with a lot more experience than me, and this is maybe why I'm sort of also partial to the athlete versus the experience. But none of them knew enough about music, and so I really got the job because they didn't think I was qualified from an experience. I didn't have an MBA. I didn't have 3 years of post-MBA experience, but I could talk pretty articulately about music, and so they thought I would actually fit in at the record label. So I'd been a management consultant before that, and so I got this job at the age of 24, working for the president and general manager of the label, based on my passion in music. And so I think for me, the lesson there has been, and as I think about my kids too, it's sort of like passions are important. And if you're starting a company or you're just taking a job, like, try to do something you're passionate about, because it just makes it easier when things are tough, that you have that fire and that passion does help you get through it. It's how I got that job. It was, my parents always made fun of me for having spent all my spare money on these CDs. And, I obviously did not plan that it was going to help me get this job, but, it was sort of my passion, and it ended up working out for me.
So I want to go back now to the failure conversation we had. And I see this in every culture, Latin America, US, Europe. So my question to you is, how do we make employees and also ourselves become less risk averse?
Yeah. I think it's I think talking about it is the first step. I think we have to also, like I said, kind of create a culture of rewarding people who failed. That someone who's had a failed startup is not a failure. They are someone who took a huge risk, stuck themselves out there, were really brave. It didn't work, but there's a lot of reasons companies don't work. And, and like I said, most fail. So I think other people need to pick that person up, help them out, celebrate them, say, this is a person who's learned a lot, and, maybe they need a job for a while. I love to hire people who've had failed businesses. Those are fantastic people to hire because, in fact, we've done like a couple of small talent acquisitions. Some of our best people are people we got from startups that failed because they know how to sort of think about solving problems in a way that's creative. I mean, that's what you have to do as an entrepreneur. So, yeah, I think that's what other people can do is help those people out and like I said, celebrate them and reward them for starting companies. And I think one of the biggest reasons people don't start a company in the first place is the fear of failure, right? So and that is probably, to me, the secret for success in Silicon Valley is not that we have tons of capital. We do have tons of capital, but the capital is there because the entrepreneurs are there and they've been successful. But this sort of notion that it's okay to fail, I mean, you name it, almost every, one-word entrepreneur you can think of had a failed business before they had a successful one. And some of them had lots of failed businesses. Reid Hoffman, who is the founder of LinkedIn and a good friend of mine, I think Reid's had 2 or 3 businesses that he started that no one's ever heard of that failed. I mean, he's, people, and he then took a job at PayPal pretty early on. That worked out very well, but there's a lot of hidden failures. You only read about the successes.
That's true. That's true. So we're just about exactly 5 minutes.
Okay.
So I'm going to let you guys now do my job and ask questions. Okay, so help me out. Who has the first question? Oh, yes, gentleman in the back to the left. Oh, just state your name and by all means your company so we can get to know each other. Well, you can get to know Dave. Oh.
It's a woman in the back.
My apologies.
Does it work like this? Yes.
It's hard to
Yes.
see. It's dark back there. So.
Hi, Dave.
Hi.
Thanks for being here and making the trip to Portugal. I wonder, what are the 3 biggest challenges you faced? And also, how did you deal with them? So how did you solve them?
Yeah, it's a great question. So with SurveyMonkey, and maybe just a quick backstory, I didn't start the company. The company was started by a guy named Ryan Finley and his brother Chris. They never raised any capital. In the first 5 years, it was literally just them. And they eventually hired a few people. And we were very fortunate to buy control from Ryan. He's still on the board. And that's when I joined, is almost 5 years ago. So when I started, as I mentioned, one of my big challenges, it was literally 12 people. And we had a really big business. We had millions and millions in revenue, very profitable, but I had no team. So my first challenge was I had to go hire a team, and I had to hire everybody myself. So all I did was recruiting for the first year, literally. And it's funny, it took me a year to hire 25 people, and now we hire 30 people in 3 months or more. The second thing we had to do was we had to take the business global. So we had a lot of customers all over the world, but we weren't really servicing them appropriately. So the site was only in English. You could only pay us in US dollars. We only had customer support on West Coast time. It wasn't a great experience if you were an international customer. And so we had to sort of figure out how to make the site and the customer experience global, but we still had this really small team, and I had a product architecture that didn't really allow for a lot of easy language customization. So we found a very small startup called Smartling, and it may make sense for some of you to work with them. We were like their second customer, and they host all of our foreign language sites through reverse proxy in the cloud. So you don't know you're going through them. We have been able to scale globally using them for languages. We just launched our 16th language this week in Turkey, which is where I was in Istanbul earlier this week. Launched our Turkish site, and we'll be launching more languages over time. So that has really helped accelerate our business. Our international business is growing twice as fast as our U.S. business, and half our traffic is now outside the U.S., and it eventually will be a lot more. So, and then the third thing is just how to scale, how to go from 12 to, we have about 280 people now. How do you kind of build a culture and keep things from falling off the tracks when you have to scale and you add people that quickly, and we have offices all over the world now and all of those kind of things, and you still want to act quickly and be like a startup. And so I don't know if I've solved that one yet, but that's a continuing challenge, but it's something we work really hard at.
Okay. Thank you. Next question. Oh, that was quick.
So, hello, Dave. I'm also an ex-EMI here in Portugal, gladly. And I would like to know how did the connection between internet and music, which started as a nightmare and nowadays is partly cloudly. So how do you feel about that strange way that music had with the net, and how did it help for you to look at the business nowadays? Thank you.
Yeah. So I think when I started, people tell you you're crazy, and sometimes you probably are crazy. But people told us no one will ever listen to music on their computer. No one will ever watch ads on a computer. The internet's never going to be fast enough for people to stream music. I mean, all along the way, people told me things that, of course, now sound silly. So you kind of have to learn to ignore some of that stuff. I think, one of the great things about having been in music early is music was one of the first things that really transitioned from being a physical business to being a completely digital business in a very rapid, 15-year period. And so it was great to be part of that. I now look at it and I say, the challenging part is over. We've kind of figured it out. There's still more to go. There's great businesses being built, Spotify and many others that are doing a great job. But for me, I look at it and say, we kind of know we know the ending. We're kind of 3/4 the way through the book. And there's still some great stuff to come, but it's sort of been solved. And so for me, I keep an eye on music, but I love what I'm doing with SurveyMonkey, because in some ways we're at that earlier stage of changing the way people use and collect data to make decisions. And we're kind of creating a market that didn't exist before. And so even though the company's 14 years old, we still have a lot of runway to grow, and it's not like something that's commonly accepted still. Most people are still taking paper surveys or sending out emails.
Just in case no one does know what SurveyMonkey is, maybe you can give your 20-second pitch.
If you don't know what SurveyMonkey is, please please sign up and use it. It's a free tool to create your own surveys, send them out to whoever you want, and collect data and make a better decision using that data.
So sign up. All right, next
Free.
question.
It's free.
Free. Oh, we have two on this side. The gentleman on the middle.
Hi, I'm here. I have a question.
Okay, yes,
Oh,
back
right
there.
My name is Maria. I just launched a platform called womenwinwin.com. It's a platform for online women entrepreneurs in Portuguese language. And for the second year round, I see that there are very few women in this forum. We're, increasing the number, but we're still very few. And I wanted to know, from your experience in Silicon Valley, is it the same? And what is retaining women from embracing the IT world? Is it too much of a men world, culture world? And it's Sheryl Sandberg, she's really making progress there. And I think we really have to embrace it. The women are really powerful, getting out of university with great
Women,
degrees.
help me out.
And so what do you think we should do to, start increasing the number, please?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of things that can be done. It's not probably any better in Silicon Valley. It might be worse. I see actually probably as many women or more than I would see at a conference in Silicon Valley here in the audience, which again, I agree is unfortunate. And I think women have a lot to, women look at businesses different than men. That's just very clear. And so I think anybody building businesses, you want to have, if you can, you can't just hire men. You got to have talented women too. So I think at the core, it starts with education and an attitude towards education. We just need more women to be involved in math and science because really, like at the end of the day, at least in the internet space, most of the people who start companies at least have some background in software development, product design, those kinds of things, which come out of people who are interested in math and science. And so I'm just a big believer we've got to fix math and science education we have a lot of things in the U.S. broken about our education system, but one of the worst things is that somewhere around the age of 12 to 14, women who are really good at math and science all of a sudden decide not to be good at it because they feel kind of sometimes that there's either social pressure not to be good at math, or they're encouraged to follow other things. There's a lot of dropout of really talented women from science and math around that age, and we need to solve that. We need to really encourage. There's less women now in computer science programs in universities in the U.S. than there were 20 years ago, and that's really terrible. So,
Next question. Mike, try again. Test, 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 test. 1, 2. You could do it. No?
they want it for the
There you go.
webcast.
Now it is.
Okay. So I'm a researcher at Cesare Business School. Our group was actually, its former name was Survey Research Center. So we work a lot with surveys. It's our main, it's our core knowledge there. And I can tell you, we will be a potential client of yours. We've been there very close once. But my question for you right now is, I would like to have an idea of what is your criteria to pick a team, and actually to give me what are the key features that make the team over at SurveyMonkey be as outstanding as it is?
Well, thank you. I hope that everyone appreciates how good a team we have. I think I look for a couple things. First of all, I look to build a team based on people's strengths. So I don't believe you can get everybody who's good at everything. And I want to find people who are really good at certain things and then make sure I've got all the different things covered. So, for example, for me, there's some things I'm good at, and those also happen to be correlated with the things I like to do. And there's some things I'm not good at, and those happen to be correlated with the things I don't like to do. So when I'm starting to hire, I think, okay, how do I hire people who are good at the things I don't like to do and actually like those things? And that, to me, is part of the building blocks of a good team, because then, you know, I can focus on doing the things I love to do and I'm good at, and those people are doing the same thing in their jobs. And so to me, building a team is making sure that you've got people in the right role where they're doing the things they love to do and that they're good at. The second thing is just in terms of hiring, I think it's really important when you're hiring to get real references on people. I don't believe you can tell that much from an interview. I think you can decide not to hire somebody from an interview. There's very few people that I've ever met in an interview that I've hired who I didn't think was the right person in the interview, and then I was wrong about that. Sometimes those people get hired because I've sort of not wanted to object to somebody else, and I've kind of learned that if I don't think they're the right person in the interview, we shouldn't hire them. Or other people on my team feel that way. But you get a lot of false positives in interviews when you're hiring people. You like the person, they're charming, they're personable, particularly hiring salespeople. Salespeople are good at selling, that's what they do. So you can kind of get charmed into hiring a good salesperson. And so I don't believe that interviews by themselves are good tests for hiring. I think you've got to actually get real references from people who are going to tell you the truth about that person and what they're like to work with and what their real strengths and weaknesses are. And so that's not asking the person for their references, that's finding people. And so most of the people that I hired in the beginning were people I either knew personally or people that were 1 degree separated from me, that somebody I knew quite well knew that person. And I was able to really reference them appropriately.
So we are almost about wrapped up, but what would be one message for everyone in this room? I mean, we have some incredible individuals here who have flown from different ecosystems, like Luisa Rivera from Papaya Ventures, also startups, and then we have our team of young students, and then we have the co-founders, Andre and Pedro. So it's all different backgrounds. So one message.
Yeah, I
for
mean,
all
just
them.
quickly, you know, I'm sort of honored to be here. I think what you guys are doing is incredibly important and hard. And I think I think you've got to you know, not worry about capital. I think that tends to be the biggest concern for entrepreneurs. You know, and it's sort of, you feel like, oh, if I only had this money, I could sort of make the business work. And that may be true, but I think a lot of times being constrained on capital, particularly in the early days, if you read Eric Ries's Lean Startup book and things like that, it can actually be very helpful to your business. So don't think about lack of capital as the reason you can't be successful. Think about how to get around lack of capital and make a business work, or get enough traction that you can actually raise that capital. So don't let capital be your barrier, I guess.
Thank you so much. A round of applause for Dave,
Thank you.
please.